Bless you. Good morning.
Thank you. Good night. Pardon me.
Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon, everyone. This is August 26th, and we are here live on Facebook on the Power of Presence group. I have our regular panel, Louise and Kelly. Louise, our author, Kelly, our Qigong teacher, and we're joined with Travis. And of course, Eileen, our incredible, I don't know how she does all the things that she does. She's going to be helping us out as well as provide her wisdom as well as we go on. So last week in our Q&A, so this is what happened is quite a few members on the Facebook group as well as during the group meditation, started discussing, like there was this one member that was talking about her son being brutally murdered, right, Eileen? Was it the son? Yes. So stabbed. And so there've been a couple of Facebook members that have talked about a child passing away or somebody passing away. So we were trying to demystify death or debunk death so that we all kind of know of more of what is eternal within us. So as we were ending the Facebook Q&A, April said, somebody asked, why does somebody pass away? So April was saying there's a contract with the soul. The soul makes contracts with the other souls. And so this soul is going to pass away and provide that lesson of grief, right? So then came the topic of healing. We were talking about generational healing, and then Lakshmi asked the next question, right, Eileen? The first one that's pending on there. And the question was, actually, I don't have her question on the chat. Her question was on, if I remember it through memory, was if we say we are going to heal our generational patterns through presence, then do we also heal the pattern of suicide? That was her question.
Yes, that was basically it. Yep.
Right. Thank you, Eileen, for the confirmation. So Kelly, you want to start? Kick it out?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the question is, if we are doing our healing, does our own personal healing heal family karmic patterns, including the pattern of suicide? Okay. Short answer, yes. Longer answer is one that gets into the kind of conversation that a person will develop with themselves about the difference between fear and love. Having known a few individuals who have committed suicide, and having known them very well and been very close with them, and you know, in hindsight, having, you know, years ago and having done more work since, and looking back at the types of personalities that they were, they're both very similar. They're both very emotionally unstable, in a sense that they overthought everything. They constantly were worrying. They were constantly angry. They're constantly overwhelmed emotionally. From doing my own work, I know that in the past, when I used to feel constantly overwhelmed, emotionally and mentally exhausted from events and from life in general, especially when I was younger. When I was a teenager, I was sick all the time, sort of right after high school from a wonderful experience of and learning educational experience of giving myself alcohol poisoning at a party, which then forced me to learn how to listen to my body very, very precisely so that I could heal it and not stay in toxic shock. But it was a very overwhelming time for me, and there were a lot of dark moments where I had thoughts of suicide come up because I was so exhausted and I was so overwhelmed. And you know, momentary for me, from my personal experience, there were momentary spaces of very dark thoughts and hopelessness and despair. And what I understand about my process and my experience and having experienced those spaces, um, and learning from those experiences and being able to look back on them with the perspective that I have now, something like suicide is an action born out of fear of facing the emotional content and the emotional energy that we feel overwhelmed by. That was always the case for me. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience and from knowing the two individuals that committed suicide when I was in high school. Um, the the experience of looking back in hindsight, I mean, everything is 2020 in hindsight. But the way that I understand it now is that the way that the ego mind is programmed to keep us in a swing, a pendulum swing, a dualistic swing of emotional extremes heightens the despair and heightens the desire and heightens the joy and heightens the anger. And that when we do our healing work, and this has been my experience, when we do our work and we go inside and we practice stepping into observation. Stepping into observation is stepping into presence, stepping into stillness. And this is the big key. A lot of people believe that karma or duality is about good and bad. That's the surface mental projection of wanting to have a safe place to understand reality. Karma and duality is about those emotional extremes, the back and forth, the extreme yin, the extreme yang, the extreme despair, the extreme anger, joy, whatever you have in the nervous system. And when you go inside, when you practice the discipline of going inside, listening to the body, learning to step away from your thoughts and understand that you are not your monkey mind and that you're not those thought patterns and those programs, it changes things profoundly. It's not easy. I mean, it's why it's work. It's why it's the work. But it's achievable. It's doable. It takes practice. So when we are doing our work and going inside into observation, we slowly slow down that race from one emotion to another. We slow down that race from one ego validation or shiny thing to another and step back into observation, and everything slows down and you can observe everything. And this is how things change. Stepping into stillness, stepping into observation is how things change. And yes, if you are doing this work and again, it's not easy stepping into stillness, stepping into observation. There are sometimes you have great success in periods of quiet and stillness. But you always have to step in and out. I find that for myself, when I have had periods of months at a time of deep calm, constant calm, consistent calm, I will have an event that challenges my discipline. And this always brings up all the moments in the past where I have not stayed centered, where I have not stayed in observation. And for me, this is what I believe the discipline is all about. The work is all about. Being present is all about. I actually had a really awesome little analogy come to mind. The Pixar movie Over the Hedge. One of my favorite parts in that animated movie is right near the end where the squirrel, Hammy, who just like zipping around and just like literally can travel at light speed. He's so energetic. Has a moment in the movie where he's moving so fast because they fed him an energy drink and sent him on this mission to go and turn off, you know, these traps, where he's moving so fast, everything's in slow motion. It's like time has stopped. And as I was talking about, you know, stepping into observation and feeling and experiencing that stillness, that's what came up. That's the image that came up, is this squirrel, you know, contentedly munching on this cookie while he's like walking faster than the lasers. He's moving faster than the lasers and the traps and stuff like that. It's a great little moment in time. And to me, it also encapsulates the whole concept of stepping away from the franticness. Even though in the movie he's moving so fast, he's moving faster than light, right? It's that juxtaposition of everything moving so slowly, and he's able to observe everything and do everything because he's shifted spaces and he's shifted realities because he's moving so fast. So short answer is yes, if you are doing your work and going inside and stepping into observation, you will break those patterns.
Thank you so much, Kelly. The one pointer I picked up was that the traditional or the generic term karmic action or karma is not actually what it means. It actually means these compulsions and tendencies are the karmic pattern, and
Yes.
they show up as emotional fields
Yes.
of extreme emotions. So thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Thank you for that wisdom. Travis, do you have any input into how would we heal the suicidal pattern if we had a suicidal pattern within the family? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, um, you know, to me, it's I try to look at what I can do within my own sphere and within my own power, and so, I mean, you know, I think that the greatest way that any of us, any individual, can help alleviate that degree of pressure and that degree of stress and pain that would make any of us or anybody, you know, strongly consider and maybe even carry out taking their own life, taking one's own life. The greatest thing that we can do is to offer our as centered and deep and pure and true quality of attention to this very moment, right? Which is another way of saying to life, or another way of saying to God, or however you want to name it. But to pour our attention in this moment into the very heart of life, and continue to be with that and offer ourselves to that. I think what happens is those traumas and pains and pressures and contractions that we carry inside of us, when we do that, they begin to unpack and unfurl, and space is made, and there starts to feel like you can breathe again. It starts to feel like there's space there. And so for me, that to me feels like the most effective and direct way that I can help with what ends up becoming suicide or thoughts of suicide or attempts of suicide, is to face all of those tangled up spaces within myself, and offer my affectionate awareness to those spaces within myself. And one of course, it's amazing and beautiful if one comes so thoroughly through that practice that they attain to some stabilized state of enlightenment. That's awesome. But I don't think that one has to even be to a permanent state of enlightenment to be of a very pronounced effect that resonates and ripples out and affects others, because by the practice of offering our attention to life, to the moment, in as sweet and soft and focused a way that we can, we're modeling that exemplary behavior just by sheer virtue of doing it and being it. Whether or not other people are even aware of it, they can feel it, and it has a very deep and pronounced effect on people around us. And I think I just think it's very far reaching. So if that makes sense, to just, and I know it can seem almost like how disconnected or something, like it's like pointing at the root under the ground and then looking at the fruit at the end of the branch and going, well, how does this end up this? But I think that it really does come down to something so simple as to just being able to, as much as possible and as qualitatively, as deep a space as possible in this moment, right? Because it's the only moment that there is. It's the ultimate opportunity, this moment, to continue to bow down before, pay homage to, offer our attention to, give our heart to life. And so I think it can actually be so simple as that.
So the healing would come from being in the here and now, being fully, like the depth, going into the infinite depth of the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what would bring the healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for the wisdom, Travis.
Thank you for the opportunity to try. Thanks.
Louise, do you have any comment on healing suicidal patterns?
Well, if you believe that we are all one, then we do have an influence on one another. There's just, no ifs or ands about it. And if, I've noticed when I'm in group meditation, like there's you feel the energy, you feel each other's connection. So we are all part of each other, and so we definitely have an influence on one another. And I know, like, sometimes when the kids are being like really rowdy and stuff, I just start going inward, and they can sense it because they start calming down. So we do definitely have an influence on each other. And I think that when we do make that choice to commit, our lives to being centered, or, being one with ourselves, that we influence people and things change, things come to you that you don't really have to try. So I think that when we are in that space, we can change our family's history, or, even myself, as growing up, my dad was very strict, so I wanted to break that pattern, and I'm the opposite. And so then that started rippling effect to how my adult kids raise their kids, because they're not as strict. And I think we just start breaking things, and we influence one another.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Observe the generational patterns. And I think it is chapter 5 of A New Earth that Eckhart kind of mentions the collective and generational patterns. So if anybody wants to study more on the generational patterns, but we can just look into our families itself, right? They can be addiction to tobacco, addiction to smoking, and it may seem very easy. Oh, it's just smoking. Everybody smokes, right? But that is also a compulsion. That is also a karmic pattern because we are giving in into a compulsion, and the presence is not there. What Kelly and Travis said, we are not paying attention that hey, something is pulling us. Like we've taken over by this smoking, right? There's a pull, and we're giving in to the pull. We are unconscious and giving in to the pull. Eileen, did anything come up for you regarding this when
That's-
Lakshmi posted it? Thank you.
Are you trying to be funny? Yeah, something obviously did come up for me. I actually was messaging Poonam after her question because I was like, well, the universe must have brought Lakshmi to that post to make that comment, to push the envelope a little bit more, because I had commented on a question previously that I had just recently gone through an experience that was very powerful and life-changing. And I said that during our Q&A, I didn't have enough time to really get into details, but that maybe at a future date I would. And then Lakshmi commented and asked, and I'm like, okay, so maybe I'm going to talk about it next time. But I know that the answer is yes. I know that because suicide runs in my family. And suicide is actually what brought me to this journey a year ago. And so from personal experience, I know that although that is something that is in my DNA, it's, you know, in however you want to word it, generational trauma for 3 generations, that it stops with me. And so I know, and I've had lots of help, Poonam and some other people, but to learn that it is possible, because not only is it stop here, but it's also not made it so that those that did come before me, I don't even know the proper words for that, but I don't want to say that their death was for good reason, because it wasn't, but it's all part of the process. And I know that I've learned a lot in the last year, and that I'm thankful for all of it, and that it is possible to heal even generational patterns that are hefty, for sure. But thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to take a moment because it's pretty deep.
I'm just going to add that when Poonam pointed it out to me, when I explained to her what happened during my experience, it actually happened in a enlightenment course that I was in. And when it happened, although I was distraught and upset, when Poonam explained to me the breaking of the pattern, like explaining it in that way, for me, like I had relief, because I knew that this process has kept my own children safe. Like I don't no longer have to worry about them doing that. It's one thing to know that I don't have to worry about myself doing that, but to know that they're safe from that also.
And with your continued guidance, the fact that they already meditate, they will be. So thank you. So filled with gratitude for this revelation. We do have a question, so we are going to deviate from the topic, and then we'll come back because there were more questions about the suicide, so I'll come back to that. Jason asked, how can we share and expand from our heart center into the unified field to share love with all humanity? Travis, you want to go first?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm afraid I might offer a similar answer to this question as I did to the last. You know, I guess what comes up for me when looking at this question is there is one practice at the core of all of them, which is kind of what I said before about just realizing or seeing that in some way that there is that which is the, you know, the uttermost or the ultimate, like kind of the heart of life, that central place where all of life's threads kind of pass through. And if we can recognize that there is such, then that it's like the mouth of the stream of, you know, out of which all things flow. If we can find the heart of life and continuously offer our you know, kind of soft and round and warm or just easy attention, you know, to that, I think it feeds us and it helps us to tap into an intelligence that is really beyond the individual. It helps us to tap into a love that is so much more than just any individual. It helps us to tap into something greater than ourselves that at the same time is ourselves, our deepest self. And so there's that, but I think I would also add that there are many practices, I think, down the ages that help to bring this about as well. One of them is what we're doing right now is community and finding and sharing in community, especially some sort of, you know, community that's centered like this around understanding and depth and spirituality. So that's huge. Another simple thing is just understanding your body's needs, getting, you know, movement, sleep, good nutrition, understanding that you have a mind that is, for the vast majority of us, very overactive. So regular meditation practice is huge. You know, being creative is another really big thing, finding creative outlets and ways to express ourselves, you know, whether it's through some form of art or all sorts of ways that we can be creative. So just understanding some of the relatively universal needs that we all share as human beings, as these kind of cosmic beings that we are. And then if you kind of check in and give attention to those things, I think that if we understand our needs and find ways to meet those needs, and then we can be better able to, as Jason said, you know, share and expand from our heart center, and new ways to share will shine through us, I think. And so and ways that we can serve humanity will realize themselves through us. So the pretty basic things, you know, I think that, but they're basic, but they're applied, they can be extremely powerful.
So what is, if you don't mind me asking, Travis,
Mm-hmm.
What is your normal practice?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
so he gets a guidance as to what is your day like?
I can give an example. Yeah. Oh,
you.
another one I left out is service is tremendously powerful practice.
Very much.
So I mean, I sit and meditate every morning. You know, I mean, if I have to work at 5 in the morning, I'll get up at 4. I have to sit before I do anything. So, and it's my favorite part of the day, if I had to pick a favorite. So I have a very regular sitting practice that I just deeply enjoy. And then, you know, I've been lucky too in my work. I've just kind of haphazardly fallen into the role of being a caregiver. And I love the people that I work for. They're my best friends and family. So it's just been a source of tremendous enrichment for me, and has served my, you know, my practice and my awakening and everything tremendously. I love to work out and run. You know, I guess that's kind of my yoga, even though it's a little more like, you know, like lifting weights and stuff, but it's a way for me to get into my body and really feel like I'm in my body. And so I exercise just about every day. And you know, working on my music is always it feeds me, you know, it gets me out of my head, and it's just such a wonderful thing. So I have that as well. I do some, you know, how I've said before, I grew up with a lot of kind of like drugs and, you know, kind of crazy hippie family. And so I used to, you know, smoke and drink and party a lot. And I don't really do any of those things anymore. I focus on my nutrition a lot. I'm kind of I feel like I'm on the outside of, you know, I used to, once all the drugs stopped, I went to sweets. I could sit and eat 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's in a sitting, you know, no problem. Like, so I feel like I'm actually on the outside of that, where I do those kinds of behaviors less and less. But it's been a lifelong practice to grow into all this stuff, and so, you know, and yeah, I'm just trying to get good sleep and good structure in my day. You know, connect with the people that matter to me, my family, and those kinds of things. So I guess that's pretty much what my everyday looks like, you know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Travis.
Yeah.
I mean, that gives a person a kind of framework, right? Don't binge watch Netflix. Like, I see so many Facebook posts about binge watching Netflix. I'm like, you're wasting so much of your time just watching mindless television, right? So, perfect example. Thank you so much, Travis. Louise, did you want to weigh in into how do you expand your heart center out into the unified field? I know you talked about sharing.
Yeah. Well, I think Travis really summed it up really great. And I think, you know, it's really important to remember that it's a very simple practice. And I think we always want to get somewhere faster or, you know, but honestly, the more you go inside, the less you have to do. And I know it sounds kind of a little bit weird, but it's true. Like, things just will come, opportunities will show up, people will show up, and that's how you are able to give and expand in that area. But it's, you know, just you know, realizing that it's a process, and that's really all that's, in my opinion, that's necessary, is to go within and to understand that it's, you know, there's steps that you take. And like Travis was saying, that, you know, it didn't happen overnight. You know, it's, you fall and you get back up, and you fall and you get back up, and each time it's less and less, and then you see more and feel more and are able to give more as you grow.
I like the lesson of fall and get back up.
Right.
You go from 2 pints of ice cream to
And
1
that's, you know,
pint.
if we, right. And just realize that that's how life is. I think a lot of times we get upset. We're like, oh, you know, I try to meditate and my mind was busy. And I one of the very first things I learned from Eckhart is he's like, okay, so then the mind's busy. Next, you know,
That is
and
what it is.
right, that's what is. And we just, you know, we'll beat ourselves up, or we'll, you know, not give ourselves credit that we're going in the right direction. It's just that day our mind was busy. And just, I think if we don't put so much emphasis on things and just trust that things will be the way they're going to be if we do our part.
And you have a similar meditation practice, right? Every day in the morning at 4 a.m.
Yeah, so the kids usually get up at 6, so I get up at 4, and I do like I'll do stillness meditation. Sometimes I'll add a guided meditation. I do a lot of journaling. I do tapping. And then I do that throughout the day because I do have 3 children, and then my granddaughter also is here, and so it's a 3, a 4-year-old, a 7, and a 9-year-old. And so that, you know, when Eckhart says that relationships are here to make you conscious, it's true, because that's the biggest practice. You know, like you could really lose it if you're not constantly bringing yourself back. And, you know, because it's chatter, questions, this, that, crying, a diaper, an accident. And you have to stay centered. And it's really made me feel very thankful for that, because before, when I first started, the only time I could get grounded or centered is if it was completely silent. And then the minute I'd walk out into life, I was like, "Woo," all over the place, you know, I'd be triggered or sent off and forgot about consciousness. I was totally unconscious. And then at the end of the day, I was like, oh. And so I've had to incorporate it throughout the day. And it's really, really made a huge difference. I can't even, I mean, I'm so thankful for that, because I'm not losing, you know, I'm not easily lost or easily triggered. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I have, you know, with this whole everything going on in the world, I've been triggered quite a bit, but it's like I know how to stop instead of let it eat away at me.
Great suggestions, Louise. Because what I see from Eckhart is there's never a prescription that you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and the next 2 hours you're going to sit in. There's no rules. There's no regulations around. But he does say you have to do meditation, inner body meditation, breath work, and communing with nature, music. These are the 5 portals of presence. So try any of the 5 and make your own practice. Each one has made their own practice, right? They've been their own gurus. So that's what I see from Travis and Louise. Kelly, I mean, you have like a strong practice because you teach Qigong. So I don't even have to ask you about practice. You want to talk about how do you move the heart center into the unified field? Thank you.
Sure. First and foremost, good point to understand is that we already are a part of the unified field of humanity. Everyone on this planet is. That's just what is. And to sort of take from what Louise and Travis have already said, going inside is how you expand your heart and share your love with the unified field of humanity. It's that simple. but it's work. And we need to work at the discipline of being in observation and building that space for ourselves. When you do that for ourselves, the sharing with the unified field of humanity takes care of itself. And that is one of the beautiful aspects of practice, is that the more we align with ourselves and our hearts, the more we align with the unified field of humanity, and we don't need to do anything. It just happens naturally, and it reflects all around us. The more we go inside, the more that presence that we exhibit, that presence of alignment, that connection with our heart, the more that actually affects everything around us and ripples outwards. I've had a few friends talk about this, and I've read it a few places. Energetically, one aligned human being is able to influence 5 million other human beings with that love. So going inside is the greatest gift that you can give yourself and humanity. I could also talk about personal practice, but
one human being affecting 5 million human beings. So just take that and absorb it. If you were still for 10 minutes, you would be affecting 5 million.
exactly.
Please
Exactly.
share your personal practice too, if you want to be short, because there's some questions. I wanted to visit the questions.
I will be very, very quick. Again, Qigong, I do the 8 pieces brocade, and I do standing stake almost all the time, holding a posture. And I love standing stake. And the reason why is because all the layers of fascia inside the body, connected to all the tissue anchors and tendon anchors to the bones inside the body, correspond to all of the energy bodies on the outside of the body. So when you're actually working at doing standing stake, Qigong or Neigong, whichever term you prefer, you're actually affecting all of the energy layers of your entire embodiment and your entire tube torus of energy. That's my favorite.
What I would say to that, and I'll tie what Travis said and you are saying, Kelly. One of the things that I have found the greatest benefit, and Travis talked about nutrition, is hydration, right? Your
Yes.
body has to move the energy, and his next question is on trauma. To move the energy, and Qigong is the most beautiful practice to move energy through your body. All those pockets of pain body, adrenaline that is stuck in your body, to move it outside and let it out, because adrenaline is supposed to get out into the universe. Like you're supposed to produce it, and through your skin, through the electromagnetic energy, you're supposed to let it out. But when we have trauma, we produce so much of it that it gets stored.
Yep.
Right? And that is the toxicity in the body, and that's going to cause the pain. So hydration, and I follow medical medium, and the greatest tip, or he is known for, the most common thing he's known for, is celery juice. On an empty stomach, drink celery juice first thing in the morning. That brings hydration to like the peak level. No amount of Gatorade, no amount of coconut water. I've drank coconut water too. Dehydration that I can feel. I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't quite catch doing what now?
Celery juice.
Oh, celery juice. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah. I have, but I haven't. I mean, I've had celery juice, but I don't have a celery juice practice. but yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
He recommends it first thing in the morning, right? And that flushes the liver, and it brings hydration. celery juice has this sodium salt that normal salt does not have. And so I would say hydration is so one of the concepts in Qigong is to have that sponginess, right? Looseness of all the cells of your body. So energy moves.
Mhm.
That's the biggest thing. If you can get that, that your energy needs to move out through your body, right?
Yep.
So, Aline, you want to say something about heart center moving across?
Sorry, I'm reading the last question in the other screen. Not so much, nothing that I would add on top of what everyone else said. I definitely resonated with what Luis was talking about. But as far as my meditative practice, because I am a busy full-time working mom, and never thought that I'd ever be able to figure out a meditative practice. But I do have one, pretty extensive one at that. One thing that's the first thing I always do. So I wake up and that's the first thing I do. That's one thing. And I do a lot of conscious breathing throughout the day. So it's just like 3 conscious breaths. Every now and then I have like a random timer that goes off on my phone to kind of just remind me to come back to the present moment. I do some of the sound meditations that Poonam has shared, usually in the evening. Another thing that I do that I have found great benefit in is having a strong gratitude practice. I do that multiple times a day. And so for me, that kind of brings me back. And I've just started in the last couple of weeks, positive affirmations, saying things that in a positive way, that whether they are happening or have not happened yet, just putting it out there into the universe. And I have found great benefit from that as well, especially in the area of healing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Eileen. Hopefully Jason got some good tips, and we move to the next question. Jason saying, what is a good way to clear our personal energy field from past traumas we hold in our bodies? Kelly, Mr. Qigong teacher, you knew I was going to come to you, right? If you talk about clearing energies.
Yeah. Again, it's one of the reasons why I sort of geek out about Qigong a little bit, and why I love sharing what I do, is because the way that you have 2 types of Qigong. You have Wei Dan, Weidan, and you have Neidan, Neidan. The Wei Dan is all of the classic stuff that you would associate with Qigong, where you're moving the body. Neidan is where you are actually holding yourself still and letting the joints and the tissues open naturally through the use of gravity. This affects blood flow. This affects the way that nutrients are moved through the body, and it affects the elasticity of the tissues and the tendons and all the fascia layers inside the body. One of the things that I discovered in my experiences, my readings, is that the tissue layers inside the body correspond to all of the external layers of energy outside of the body, what people refer to as the aura. You know, the etheric, the buddhic, the monadic, the egoic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have the same number of layers of tissue inside the body as you do energy layers outside the body. And to me, this just made sense. And even without that point of reference, one of the biggest things that I have experienced is spontaneous dissolving of energy blocks or emotional energy spaces that I didn't want to look at, fears, traumas, number of times where I'm having a great session and I just like lose it and bawl like a baby because I had an old movie, I had an old story come to the surface. And because I'm holding the space literally with my body, I'm literally holding a physical space of neutrality with my body and maintaining my breathing and maintaining my discipline while I feel all of this emotion come up, instead of getting triggered by it, instead of becoming hooked into it or looped into the emotional revisiting or re-anchoring of the trauma, it passes through me. So instead of going, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, I end up being in a space of observation and letting everything just move through me. So healing trauma, one of the biggest things that I have learned is that it's just not a mental game. You have to feel the pain that you hold on to. You have to feel the sadness, and you have to grieve for the choice of believing in your pain. You have to accept that that is a reality, that that feeling, that those spaces of feeling is a reality that you have to look at and accept that it's there. And for me, almost every single time I actually finally accept that a space is there, all of the information, the movies, the little, you know, images, rolling movie clips, you know, flash by, and all the information comes to the surface, and all of the, you know, anger, hurt, pain, or whatever just comes up and out. Sometimes I just sweat, sometimes I cry, sometimes it's almost so overwhelming energetically that I want to fall asleep even. So for me, healing is a very, very physical thing. It always has been. It's something that I've experienced since I was a kid. Got lost in some of the new age stuff that I got involved in my 20s. But it was also a really good learning experience because I also learned that no one can heal me except for me. No one can do my work except for me. And that is the whole point of having a discipline of responsibility, of being aware, and not just being aware, but having the gratitude of the moment, in the moment, for when all of the hurt and the pain comes to the surface so that you can actually see it, because that means you're letting go of it because you're able to observe it and see it and feel it.
The connection just froze for a minute.
Oh.
So,
Was I getting too sparkly?
no, you were not getting too sparkly. So, one of the things I would point out, Kelly, that in most cultures, if not surely like a lot of it, this pattern, right? Men don't process emotions. They hide their emotions. They're not allowed to cry,
Exactly. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I would say, as a man, since Jason is a masculine name, right? Let your emotions, what your description is telling me is, if you feel like crying, cry.
Yes.
Cry it out, right?
Yep.
Don't hold it in.
Yep.
Process your trauma, right? Because that is the holding of the energy, and then that's going to become the pockets of knots in your body, and then you have that frozen shoulder, or you have like the knee pain or some ankle pain. I
Yep.
mean, realize all that is the pain body sitting in your body. If you were doing qigong every day, then you're processing that energy every day and it's flushing out. And then water, hydration, you're flushing it out. The toxins are flushing out.
Yep.
So toxins are what is formed in your body if you don't process emotions properly. Don't think that your body is separate from your consciousness. It is your consciousness is breathing in into your cells, trillions of cells of your body, right, Kelly? So that's the beautiful point. Thank you. Travis, did you want to say something about how to process trauma?
You know, well, I feel like Kelly already said it so beautifully, but one thing I'll add is just don't ever give up. Just you just because I know for myself, it's like this. It just goes on. There's things keep unpacking, and all these things you didn't know were there, and you go, oh, now I've. Sometimes I'll want to almost think of it. I think it's the natural tendency of the mind to want to think of things in a linear way. You go, okay, well, I did that, and then it's done. I think these things move in more of a cyclical way. And so there'll just be reoccurring things that come up. I feel like I've been dealing with these things so long and so much. I just don't mind when they come up, you know. So it's not even like a problem really, and that's helpful because I'm not fighting against it. If you know, because it almost makes me think of like eating or digestion in the way that you were just speaking, Poonam, like, and our emotions are like that. We process them and they're always being created. And so we want to be, you know, constantly feeling it through and letting it go, and new stuff comes in. And so just to never give up with it. Just don't think that because you're feeling new pain or new emotions that you're not doing it right, or that you're always going to be stuck in some way. That it's just, if you can be okay with that happening all the time, then new experiences, new pains, new emotions, these things can come in, and they don't have to be viewed as a problem. They can just, they're no more a problem than some clouds in the sky. You know, they're just passing through, and they'll evaporate on their own. But I think if we fight against them, then we add insult to injury and compound the situation, and actually, you know, create more tension and more tangledness and more tightness and contraction. And so yeah, so just to never give up with it.
And the tightness is actually what will end up being the pain body. It'll become a knot, and then pain, and then severe pain. And now you have arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. Yes. So it'll just, inflammation is, your body's getting inflamed, right?
Yeah.
You bring a very good point, Travis. You would not believe it. Kelly actually mentioned it 2 or 3 weeks back. And I actually wrote it down that I need to make it a topic in one of the Q&As, because you were talking about, Kelly, that in your marriage, there were certain pockets that you would hide. Yep. And eventually, after you threw up, like finally you processed all of that, and you threw up a lot after your divorce, right?
Yep, 2.5 months straight, pretty much. So, morning and night, like clockwork almost, at least twice a day.
So Jason, that's a really, both Kelly and Travis have that experience. Every little pocket that you want to hide, right? And say, I'm not going to touch it. You know, it's like, Eckhart has this thing about putting an arrow and then we are going around the arrow, right? We don't want to pull the arrow. We are just like touching it all around. That's what we dance around all our life, is we are going around the arrow instead of, and there are very many arrows. We just need to take it and pull it and then feel the pain of the pulling out the arrow. Thank you, Travis, for that. And we'll make it a topic because I want to see how each one of you process those little pockets and what it takes, what kind of courage it takes to actually, and the presence power it takes to actually sit with it, right? Sit with that little, maybe some examples. I'm deeply humbled already by Eileen sharing what she shared which is also a pocket, right? That we wouldn't touch. We would hide it away somewhere and never
I thought
talk
it was
about
already
it.
gone. Like literally thought it was already gone. And then as soon as someone said just one word, it came out of her mouth and I just lost it. And I had thought that was already 10 years ago dealt with, 20 years ago. So yeah, they're there, but they don't go away until they're actually dealt with.
Thank you, Eileen. Louise, did you want to talk about how to process trauma?
Well,
Add-
yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, you know, one thing to remember is that some traumas or pain body take more time than others. So like I have a friend who has chronic pain throughout her body, like she's always in pain. And so, you know, I've been telling her, like, you have to sit with it, you have to sit with it. And so we just sat with it. I sat with her, along with her, to kind of like guide her through it. And because she said that a big part of it, the reason that she felt it didn't work before that, is because she didn't really understand what I was saying. So she said she would just sit there and she's like, nothing's happening. So when we kind of walk through it, and afterwards, like, you know, by no means did it take it all away. This has been chronic pain that she's had in her body for years and years, and all over her body, not just one area. But afterwards, she felt, she said, lighter, a lot less pain, and it lasted. Like the next day, she was like, oh, I still am not in that much pain, you know. So, but there's a you know, I told her, you got to keep continuing till you feel it. And that's my experience with different things, is just sitting with it. And it might not go away that first time, you know, it might still be there, but you got to, you know, go to work, or you got to do this, you got to do that. So the important thing is just to keep going back to it until you feel that it's really gone, and you'll know because you'll feel it.
Thank you, Louise. Perfectly said. I was listening to, now I moved to another Jane Roberts book, which is Set Speaks. And in there, Set says the first layer is an alpha frequency. The first layer of consciousness is an alpha frequency. Then he calls it A-1. A-1 is where we can get into that frequency and actually bring healing to another. So if we were able to go into our depth, and I'm sure Travis caregiving, he must be going into that A-1, because you cannot give, like if you're doing it superficially, you are not able to give that much and actually be with the other, right? Day in and day out and day in. How long have you been doing it, Travis?
Over 20 years. Yeah.
Hats off to you.
It's fun.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that depth, Travis, you wouldn't be able to, because caregiving is, I've taken care of my friend. She had a tibia plateau injury and she was bedridden. So I've like washed her hair and helped her, like been in the hospital with her. It's not easy.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the fun part of all that has always been, I've always thought the tasks I perform are pretty simple. You know, you're helping someone take a bath or tie their shoes, things anybody does for themselves, anyone can do. But it's really when I can see that I'm bringing some joy or some light or enrichment, you know, and it's shared, right? It's like, you know, we're sharing the joy of life together. Then I go home and I feel like I did a good job. That's what, to me, the job is anybody could put a shoe on, but for me, it's really satisfying when I go, we had a wonderful time together. You know, life was better for both of us because of what we shared today. and we laugh and hang out. You know, that to me is really what it makes life special. So that's really, so I get some, it's, you know, I get a ton out of it, you know, so yeah.
And you know, like we don't realize like we do all these things naturally, but for somebody who's been on a hospital bed, then bedridden, to wash their hair is, they're so filled with gratitude, the joy that they feel about their hair being washed, right? That it's gotten, now it's like oily and all the sweat is in there. And now somebody's cleaning and massaging their hair, right? You can see the joy in their face. And it's such a simple, it's nothing. It's nothing, right? So so amazing, like giving them a sponge bath or washing their hair, something simple. So thank you. Thank you for your service, Travis.
My pleasure.
Rose asks, why do we have anxiety on our spiritual path? Travis, did you want to go and then we go around the circle?
Sure.
Why do we have anxiety?
Um, well, I think that there's some, it's fear, right? Of what has yet to come. So it's, I think anxiety is kind of, it's like a fear of potential outcomes. It doesn't help to yield desirable outcomes, right? So when we, so it's not, so there's that, and I don't know. I mean, to me, I think that, you know, fear usually, if one looks at it, it always comes back to one sense of self. I think it's usually unexamined and pretty unconscious, but we go, oh no, I won't be who I am in the same way anymore if this happens or if that happens. So our sense of safety and our sense of identity is tied up in these the outcomes of things that we might want or desire. And so we fear, we get anxious, we go, oh no, this, and so, or you might have some shame or guilt. You don't want people to see you. You're, you know, there can be so, but it's always tied to this self and sense of self, sense of identity of who I am, right? And so I think that I think that it's that unconscious self that is afraid of losing itself. It's afraid of its annihilation. It's afraid that if some undesirable circumstance takes place, that you will lose something. You will lose some part of yourself. And so I think that the remedy for that, and I guess I'm maybe speaking in really broad ways right now, I don't know, but just that I think that the remedy for that is to in one's own way to continually check in and ask that question, who am I? And like we've been saying tonight, to go inside, to go inward, to do that, then one can tap into a place within themselves that it doesn't need things to be a certain way and isn't so afraid of things happening this way or that way. And it's not so fragile. It's not such a, it's not under so much threat, right? And so we have to, I think that to overcome or to have it, for anxiety to dissolve, we quite likely we have to get in touch with that place deeper down inside of ourselves that doesn't feel threatened, because it's not identified with circumstance. It's not identified with things that change. It's the kind of changeless root or core of who we are, which is the same core as, you know, life and all life. That's that place where we all connect. So it's best I got in this moment for that one.
I think it's what Eckhart would have said is the identification of the ego is what you're saying. The ego, the identified mind is being stripped down, and now light is shining through as that void is being created. And then the ego is like, I'm dying, help, help,
Yeah.
right? So that's why the anxiety starts. And we have to use that little awareness that said, I'm going to take the spiritual path to keep at it. If not, the ego will pull us back into the alcohol, sit and drink alcohol, watch TV, whatever unconsciously we were doing before we came to the spiritual path. So thank you for that, Travis.
Can I add one more thing real quick?
Sure.
Just that I think it's important to note too. I know in my own experience, and it's my understanding that this is not uncommon for people as they embark upon a spiritual journey, is that one sense of self is oftentimes going to toggle, and between that deepest true self and that egoic surface self. So just to allow space for that and understand that your sense of self might be kind of jumping around and trying out a lot of seats before it finds its home. And so, yeah.
And that's okay. That is what is.
Yeah.
Surrender to what is. Thank you. Louise, did you want to speak about anxiety on the spiritual path? Were you affected by anxiety on the spiritual path?
Yeah, it comes up still, like, like just different things with the whole homeschooling, just like, but the minute that comes up, it's like, that's the minute you recognize it, you're already present, and then you just bring more presence into it. And I think it's a little bit along the lines of what we were talking about a minute ago, is either depending on the situation, you either sit with it or you inquire, like, why am I feeling anxiety right now? Is this something that's true, that's really happening? Or am I creating this in my mind? And a lot of times it's, yeah, I'm creating this in my mind. And so then you can let it go easily. Or also a lot of times when I start to feel some kind of anxiety, I'll touch my heart and I just ask myself, like, is there anything wrong in this moment? And there's nothing wrong in that moment. And that seems to calm things down and send me back to consciousness.
Perfect. That's a good technique. Touch your heart, and that's going to bring you to the present moment, which there is no anxiety in the present moment, no problems in the present moment. So thank you. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Kelly, did you want to talk about anxiety on the spiritual path?
Sure. Louise, I use the hand on the heart thing too. That's actually sort of, sometimes I'll do this and this when my head is like, when I used to be really, 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 really chatty upstairs, I do these both because you're basically using the largest organ in the body to connect everything. Works like a charm. But yeah, hand on the heart whenever something deep comes up is always like, oh yeah, okay, wait, I'm like right here. Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, when I was younger, lots of anxiety. I come from a family that deals with a great deal of anxiety and depression. And I've, never used any pharmaceuticals to deal with it. I've always been physical discipline, the endorphins and the adrenaline from, I've been lifting weights since I was 12, martial arts since I was 8, Qigong since I was 12. It all sort of rolls together. My understanding from my experience of working through anxiety is that moments of anxiety for me, once I began to develop that discipline of going inside and stepping into observation, I realized that there are symptoms of fear programs, of emotional defense mechanism programs. that I inherited from family, from my friends, the cultural mindset, even going, that far, or the global mindset, even in terms of embedded belief patterns. For me, anxiety was always about self-denial and not allowing myself to express myself or to accept that I had that space or that support. And the more I've done my work, the more I've realized that it is a symptom of not being in alignment. And I have, every once in a while, there will be, when I'm going, and have, many busy days, and I have very little downtime. I can still feel that pressure from that space of anxiety. It's like, oh my God, we should like be worried about this, or like, what about this, or like, what about that? And I take every one of those moments now as an opportunity to reinforce and revisit my commitment to myself. So before, I got to a certain level, a certain space of awareness and discipline with my personal practice, I'd always be being pulled out of my center and out of alignment. Now it happens, but not nearly as much as when I was, a teenager or something like that, and was going nuts and going through puberty and stuff like that. But I look at any moment of pressure from fear of any kind, whether or not it's external or internal, where I get triggered and I have something come up, I look at everything as an opportunity to learn more about myself and to feel a deeper space of commitment to my discipline of being in alignment with my heart. Literally everything's like research to me now. It's like, oh, hey, wow, what was that? It's like, where did that come from? It's like, is it movie time? Do we need the popcorn? Like, do we get drinks with this movie? What's going on? Right. So that's literally how I look at everything now.
So, like, April was saying last time that the soul entered this lifetime to learn about, or actually present us with the lesson of unconditional love. Like, they took their life, the soul passed away, they caused us grief, but the grief is teaching us towards unconditional love, right? So the anxiety, your alignment is also saying, so the commonality of it all is move towards alignment with inner beingness,
Yes.
move to unconditional love. The mission statement for every human being should be, I in unconditional love in this here and now. Am I in the state of Satchit Ananda, in total bliss of this moment? Right, Travis? Enjoying this moment, enjoying this panel, enjoying this conversation. So alignment, 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 whether it is a passing away or something as simple as anxiety. Thank you, Kelly. Beautiful. Eileen, did you want to, I know you have experienced anxiety, so you want to talk something about anxiety?
Just two things. One, that I learned very early on, that anxiety is just a pointer to the present moment. If you're feeling that, it means you're trying to go forward, and what you expect of the future, what you think will happen, and that means you're not in the present moment. And then another thing that came to me this morning during meditation was the whole idea of gratitude. Again, all the time. But when I was thinking about it this morning, or sitting with it rather, I realized that I'm grateful for everything. And it's kind of what Kelly was just talking about. Because I realized that I'm either grateful for what is happening in the moment, what has happened or will happen, or I'm grateful that I'm learning from it. So like, it doesn't matter what it is. And that came to me this morning. And then Kelly was just talking. I was like, wait a second, this just was in my head this morning. But I really am. So things happen, but now it's just a matter of catching myself. So when things happen, like catching myself in that moment to be like, what am I supposed to be learning from this right this second before I do something like my old self? But I'm getting much better at catching that now and realizing in that moment, like, okay, this is the lesson I'm learning here, and this is what I'm going to do, kind of a thing. But it really is all grateful for all of it.
And I'm going to tie back into the, thank you so much, Eileen, for that pointer. I'm going to tie it back to where we started, right? We were talking about suicide as a pattern. If we don't catch ourselves in noticing the pattern and say, okay, I see this compulsion towards, what is it called? Existential, there's some kind of anxiety about it,
Angst, existential angst.
angst. So that's what Eckhart was affected by as well, right? And so if we don't see this pull of this existential anxiety pulling us towards, now I want to take my life. Everything is so worse, like a mind telling us a story about everything is so worse, people are dying in my family, right? If you don't catch that there is a pattern, generational pattern, and there's this pull, and let me pay attention to the pull and break it, break the pattern. So every time you notice and break the pattern, we're healing it for humanity, right? We're healing the humanity of that pattern. And that is why it is so important that we heal our patterns, get over our trauma, not use it as a victim identity and be identified with the trauma. I think it's been, I know there are quite a few questions and it's been about an hour, 20 minutes. You're in the East Coast, so it's getting late. Do you all want to start again? I know there are questions pending on the chat, so we can start again next week. Are y'all okay with it? It's been a long day. Or do y'all want to take one last question? Is there one interesting question? We can take one last question.
Oh. Well, there's a quick question for Kelly. She's Lakshmi just wants to know if there's information about the influencing of the millions of people. There's information of that somewhere that she can see.
I know I've read it. I'll see if I can find which book, if I can remember, because it's sort of old information was like I ran into it in my 20s. I'm pretty sure I have the book still, but it's sort of one of those things I was like, oh wow, so like legitimately like the whole humanity global heart thing is real and you can do that. Wow, that's so okay. All right, let's do this. So I'll look for it. I'll look for it.
And then there's a couple of other things that kind of connect to one another. So I feel like they're going to turn into more lengthy information. But the couple that are here in the Zoom, there's like 2 here that we didn't get to, plus there's 1 or 2. There's 1 more in the Facebook. So maybe we copy those 3.
And deal with them next time.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that Samar had asked last time. I'm going to go ahead and ask that question. It's at the very top where she says, I appreciate understanding more about death. So we said last time that I watched, or I'm taking this course with Dr. Eben Alexander, who had a near-death experience, and Karen Noel, the co-founder of Sacred Acoustics. And in there, in the course, module 1, Dr. Eben Alexander says, the reason why young souls, like babies and young children, young people pass away is because they're actually an old soul. So they're done with their earth school, and so they pass away, right? So that's why she's saying, especially young children of old souls. I wonder, does one family have a tendency to get more old souls birthed into their families than others with or without early death? Do old souls commit or try to commit more suicides because they can't release their worried past lives? Kelly, did you want to give it a start?
Sure. Okay. Old souls. I would say that there is some weight to certain families having accumulated more evolution or more work, or that have a certain pull to manifest old souls. But then again, I also believe that anyone who's on this planet for however short a period of time is an old soul, because of how much evolution is happening on this planet energetically. So, you know, I feel that sometimes people sort of focusing on, oh wait, are there like so many old souls in our family because we're special, is can possibly be an ego thing, right? And the question about old souls not being able to handle things and committing suicide as a result kind of strikes me as a no. I do not feel that soul contract. Well, I do not. It just doesn't make sense to me. Old souls are old souls because they are understanding of the work ahead of them. I feel that something like suicide has a lot more to do with a soul level contract in terms of holding a certain amount of energy to bring it into a family and then to disperse it with the transition away from this living reality or third dimensional reality, if you will. That's one of my takes on that. Sometimes certain families that I know go through an awful lot, but one of the things that I have come to understand from my own work, my own journey, is that the universe does not throw anything at you or give you anything unless your heart and spirit is actually ready for it. And this sort of goes into the concept of co-creation and soul contracts in terms of, what we were talking about last week about the woman with the son who was brutally murdered and all the grief, and understanding how, it goes back to what I just talked about how I look at everything as a learning opportunity. And I view everything, even going back through some of the trauma that I have been through in my life, or having some of the people that I've known commit suicide, or even dealing with those types of dark thoughts myself when I was a teenager, and feeling just overwhelmed and wallowing in despair and not knowing what to do, and feeling at a complete loss as why should I be here. My understanding is always about understanding choice, and that it's got nothing to do with whether or not one family is one way or another, and it's not about whether or not old souls have trouble dealing with certain things. My personal feeling is that it's all about understanding choice and understanding whether or not we are choosing to align with ourselves and align with our hearts or not. And for me, it's that kind of simple math, and it doesn't go any further than that, really.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to move through everyone, and then I have something to say about it at the end. Louise, did you want to speak about it, please?
I just kind of basically agree with Kelly. I think I strongly believe that we do come into this world with a contract, a soul soul contract. And I just feel that maybe some people that was, commit suicide, that was something that they needed to go through. And that's really my only thought on it.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Travis, did you want to speak about, I put the description at the very end so everybody can read it.
Yeah, I
It's
can
a
see it.
long, right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You know, to me, it's a real mystery. And I don't just personally, I don't feel a strong need to understand. I don't mind it remaining a mystery for me. And that's not to say that it's not understandable, that people can't see these things and know about these types of things. But I definitely, I mean, when I know my own experience, being me, that I really, there's a feeling in me where I go, I can feel and see and know that there's so much that I've been through. Like I feel like what would be called an old soul, like where when I was 17 and had this, just everything cracked open, and I just thought there's no way that I could have come to this place within myself in 17 years. The notion seemed comical. And so that was when I really started to, just from my own firsthand experience, go, okay, I really, this is enough to really make me strongly entertain the notion of reincarnation. And there has been a tremendous degree of pain and things that I feel like I've carried for a long time. And I've had my moments where I've never felt like I would actually do it, but I've definitely had like the option of suicide present itself in my mind because I'm under such stress and pain that but it's just, I just have always known that that's something that I just don't see myself doing that in this lifetime ever. So, and that's about all I know about all of that. I really don't know what would have, as far as a family goes, and having multiple old souls. I do feel like we choose our families. I think about my family. I feel like we all chose to do this to get, I think they're all great sports for choosing me because I know I'm not easy. And so I think there is something there, but that's about all I've got with all of that. So.
Thank you, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Eileen, did you want to comment on it?
Not on this, no. Nothing really comes up for me.
So, thank you, Eileen. So, I was, along with taking the course with Dr. Eben Alexander, I also started to listen to the book, Sid Speaks. And in there, and it's a channel teaching by Jane Roberts, who channels this non-physical entity called Sid. He does say that families have psychically the soul contract, right? Like what it is the husband. So Jane Roberts' husband in a past lifetime, she was his son. It's something like that. Then they take a rebirth, right? And become husband and wife. So it's something like that, that there is a soul contract with all the entities that are born into a family. So yes, I don't know about whether they are going to be suicidal in a certain family, but there are patterns that repeat. Like it may be that this family says, oh, I'll make jealousy the pattern, or I'll make resentment the pattern, right? There's some people, I've watched this show years back called Iyanla Fix My Life, and I could see like the strong resentment and not talking to their siblings or their grandmother or their mother. Like it's been 20 years and you've not talked to your mother, right? How can you, to me, it's like it's your birth parent, right? But people can be in that mode of holding resentment, and generationally, right? The mother would have done that, the grandmother would have done to her grandmother and grandmother, right? They done that. Of course, like abuse is a pattern too, right? So I do see that families do get born, do also commit or try to commit more suicides because they can't release their worried past lives. It's not that the past life is not a worrisome thing. It's just like what April was saying. If everybody can understand that Eckhart's teaching is about presence practice or presence, being in presence. And what is presence? Presence is that field of energy that is unconditional love. And that's what April was saying last week as well. And I'm sorry, due to technical difficulties, you couldn't be here today, but each experience, if you notice with it non-judgmentally, look at your experience is teaching you or moving you towards unconditional love, right? Whether it was a soul, how did these people come? And every person, even people in your city that you're born in or in the city, are all connected. The friends, the co-workers, all of us are connected. Why does Eileen have to be the one that always responds to me and contacts me? There is a connection. Louise feels that connection, right? In group meditation, I feel connected to everyone that comes to the group meditation. I feel connected to everyone that is on Facebook. Like there's a certain energetic transfer, right? We are all to know of ourselves at that electromagnetic energy field is the vibrational entity that we are, is the unconditional love that we are. Going back to Jason's, the field, the electromagnetic field that's going to spread all over this universe. That's who we are. Is it a good time to end and we can meet again next week? Travis, will you be able to come speak on the Facebook Live next week as well?
Yeah, I can. This same panel next week.
Yes.
Yep. Happy to.
And we'll have some chat. I think we have some pending questions, so if we can copy the pending questions, I'll try and copy them too. And then we'll start again where we are already doing the pending questions from last week. So we're never getting caught up. So honor and a privilege, so deeply humbled by everyone's experiences that were shared today.
Thank you, everyone.
And everyone out there. Many blessings. Have a fantastic week. See you all next week. Bye.
Next week.